Hey guys, I just thought I would have some fun, and I have been really looking at enums and working with enums lately because it's been quite exciting to see how I can use enums in replacement for some design patterns. It seems like this is the way that Dart and Flutter, it's an exciting opportunity for programmers. So I'm going to show you what I have been working on today, and I just want to take note of it for later on for my future use. And what I've been working on is this, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be cycling through widgets, some animated widgets, and when we press the button we're going to change the size, color, and what is displayed on the widget. And we can do it, and we're just cycling through. It could be any widgets, but I've just chosen it to be a widgets that change colors and the text that changes as well. So let's go ahead and see how I've done it. I'm also going to be using BLoC, and I'm going to use BLoC because I can really take advantage of the state changes and making sure that I'm working with constant widgets, which is a requirement for working with enums. So let's just see how I go ahead and do it. I'm just going to start from the beginning, and I suppose we should start with first. Let's go ahead and put our Flutter, and this is the most current one that I have that's available right now. So we're going to use that. And I'm just going to go into the pubspec.yaml, and all I've done is I've just started up. I've named it. Named my file. Doesn't really matter what I've named it, and I'm just going to go through and show how I'm going to do this, and for future steps for me to follow in the future. And if you guys have some fun with me and making these beautiful color changes, well, I'm glad that you like it as well. Okay. So with regards to what I'm working on here, I guess what we should start out with is just what we always going to start out with Flutter. So I'm just going to be void main. Oops. Void main. Does anybody else have problems with Copilot? And I'm just going to go ahead and do a run app, and I'll just go, sure, let's shoot. Why not? My app. And with my app, just make a stateless widget. And I'm just going to call it my app. Because, hey, why not? Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead. Let's go and make this constant right now. And let's go ahead and let's go ahead and install, or let's go ahead and import flutter.main. And I'm going to get rid of these elements right here. Okay, so from here, I'm just going to go ahead, and I think that I'm just going to start out by just first showing what we're going to do. Then let's work on the BLoC components. How about that? All right, cool. So I think that I am just going from here going to worry about making my material app. And with my material app, I'll just go with my home, and nothing fancy. Let's just go ahead and do a my home page. Okay, and then let's go ahead and make my home page. And in the beginning, let's go ahead and make a stateful widget, because I want to start out with why we're doing it, what we do with the stateful widget and the set state, and then we'll go ahead and then go from there and use the BLoC. Okay, let's go ahead and add a constant. Let's go ahead and do all the things that we need to do. Okay, let's go ahead and let's now look at the enum. that we're going to add, that we're going to use to cycle through the widgets. Okay, so we're going to just do an enum, and then I'm just going to call it display state to begin with. Okay, and with the enums, I'm just going to have them called different colors, and the colors are going to represent what colors the widgets are going to be. So I'll just go green and red, and no particular order, just because it's what I'm thinking of. Yellow, how about purple? Ooh, and I really like the orange color, so why not some orange? And I'm going to finish it off with a semicolon. And why I'm doing the semicolon is because I want to do a constant, I want to do a constructor. So I'm going to do my display state. And with that, let's go ahead and set a widget to it. So let's do a widget, and let's just call it widget. And we're going to need to have this come in from our constructor. So I'm just going to put required. And then this dot widget. And why? Oh, let's go ahead and do this. All right, so why it's complaining is because we now need to have a widget in which we are going to embed. So I'm just going to put these here for later, because we're going to use this is the constructor for each one. And let's go ahead and build the widget that we're going to be talking about. Okay, I think that I would like to call it, let's just use a stateless widget, because why not? And let's call this a color container. Okay, now I think what we should use in the color container is not just a container, but let's use an animated container, because when we change the state, these animated containers are capable of altering their sizes, their colors, what's displayed on them. But for right now, let's go ahead. Each animated container or animated widget, whatnot, it needs a duration. And let's just, for fun, let's just do it for, I don't know, let's do seconds. And let's just do 1 second. Okay, and let's see, what else do I want to do? Okay, yeah, so I want to have a width, and let's just make it 50 for now. And we're going to come back and change that. Height 50, and oh shoot, well, let's make it red for right now. Okay. Yeah, that seems okay. And then from here, what I'd like to do, let's go ahead and then have the colors change from when we have these display states. And let's put into constructors, we're going to add a color container. But what we can do is use these color containers, and what we can do is change the colors and the size. So let's go ahead and put in a final color, and then let's just do color, and then final double and size. And let's just go ahead and have these. Go ahead and add this in here. I'm going to change this around because I much more prefer, instead of this, I much more prefer this kind of format. Just find it nicer. All right, and then for the green, let's go ahead and put widget, and then we're going to put color container, and the color that I want is colors.green, and the size, let's make it 200. All right, let's see, widget, color container, let's go ahead and this, and instead of that, let's make this instead of the size 150. All right, sounds reasonable. Widget, we'll need a color container. Blue, 100 seems to be all right because I want it to change size when I cycle through it. I want to really demonstrate that I can change multiple variables inside of this widget, and it's just going to work, and it's going to work really cool because we're going to be cycling through this display state, which is the enum. All right, so widget, and we need a color container, yellow. I think I would rather have this to be 75. All right, so widget, color container, purple, 50 is good, and widget. Let's do another color container, orange, and 25. Not bad. All right, not bad, not bad. All right, cool. So we've got the display state set up. Not bad. So let's go back into our widget, our stateful widget, and let's see what we can do from here. With my stateful widget, my home page, I want to work with the scaffold. And in my scaffold, I will just do an app bar. I guess I could have it do all of this. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. I just use Copilot, and yeah, I do want to use an app bar, but for the title of it, I would just prefer to call this enum state cycling demo, I suppose. Let's go ahead and finish that with a period. We do want to have a center, and then I do want the child, but I don't want any of the columns, so let's go ahead and get rid of the column. And instead of the column, I'm going to have the center. Inside the center, I'm going to have the display state. So that's coming from our enums, right? And then we're going to do values. You're going to love this. Check this out. And then what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and make a value up here. And the value, let's just call it, oh shoot, let's make it an int. And we'll just call it value. And let's set it equal to 0. And the values we're going to have, let's go ahead and put in value. And we're going to go dot widget. All right, so that the enums now contain the appropriate logic to know what it is that we're going to be doing. All right, so now let's go ahead and go to the floating action button. Sure, let's just leave it at, all right, so let's go cycle. Okay, and then let's go ahead and put this as change. All right, change circle. Okay, and let's go ahead and get rid of that, make it a more appropriate. All right, and then on the press, okay. Now we're going to go through some logic, okay? So I want to cycle through the display state. So I want to go from the green to the red to the blue, yellow, purple, orange. But when I get to the end, I want it to go back to the green again. And we're just going to consider this like a list, so the index of a list. So let's go ahead and work a little bit on that. Okay, let's work on what we have here. Let's work on the onPressed. So let's do a set state, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go through and change things if we have. So what we want to do is we want to increase value. So set state value, and then let's just say plus for right now. Oh, yeah, let's not forget to change the size of these things, or it will never cycle through. Okay, and then let's go ahead and change this to color. Okay, let's go ahead and restart it and see what happens. All right, so boom, works, it works, it works, and then we're gonna stop pretty soon here. Yep, it's gonna have a crash, and the reason why the crash is expected because our index is greater. So let's go ahead and work on the logic for this. So we're gonna go if value is equal to display state dot values dot length -1. Yeah. So all this is correct right here. Copilot has accurately predicted. So let's see what happens now when this goes through. So change, 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 change. Okay, now it should go back to bigger. All right, and that's exactly what it did. Okay, so we're now done with cycling. All right, now if that's all you want, then you can stop right here. If that's all that you needed, then you can stop right now, and we're done with cycling. But what I'd like to do now is work on doing the BLoC components and making sure that we can get rid of this stateful widget. Not that it's really horrible to have a stateful widget. It's just that it makes it a lot easier when we're working with making apps if the stateful widget isn't there. And we have our state management used like with RiverPod or BLoC, which are my two favorites right now. So let's go ahead and let's start working with blocks, and let's go ahead and instead of having, this is kind of like the counter apps when you're talking with blocks, if you've gone through those examples, instead of having this right here, I want this to be in my BLoC. I want this variable, this thing that changes, to be in my BLoC. So let's go ahead and let's start working with this. So let's make a class which is going to hold the variable, and we're just going to call that counter state. Pretty original name, don't you think? Okay, and yeah, so counter state, and I want it to have an integer, which I'll call counter. Sure, why not? Copilot, well done. Okay, now when we're working with a BLoC, 8.0.0 and above, let's start getting into the idea of making sure that we have an initial state which we're going to use when we're going to be working with the actual blocks. All right, so BLoC's going to have the events, and then there's going to be the BLoC that we work with. So let's go ahead and see what we do this. And I think I'm going to go through and do, the full BLoC components so that I can have a good idea of it when I go back and review in a couple weeks or a couple months when I might have taken in vacation and I don't remember it so well. So initial state, and yeah, let's go ahead and extend counter state. So right here, and then we're going to set it as a 0 value. And I think that I think that'll be okay. I usually like to make this required so that I know precisely what it is that we're talking about here. But in this case, I'm going to let it slide, I think. Okay, now blocks need events. And let's go ahead and make abstract class. And then let's go ahead. Now, I do BLoC just because it's business logic come in. So I prefer the BL. Now, it's not technically correct, but I like to do it this way anyway. Events. So since this is an abstract class, I can extend this abstract class, and let's just go ahead and make the events what it is that we want these blocks to do. when we hit buttons. Okay, so we're going to want to increment. I don't want to call it event, I just want to call it increment, and this is going to extend a block. Okay, and that's it. When we pass pass to the blocks, we're just passing this increment, and the increment we're going to set up in a moment to tell the block how to process it, which is just really, really nice. Nice clean code. Okay, so, and I want to do a reset. Okay, so when I look at my logic right here, I'm going to want to add, and then I'm going to want to set it to 0. Okay, so I'm just going to call it reset, and this is going to extend my blocks as well. Very cool. Okay, now I'll make another class, and wow, Copilot's really good at predicting things that we're going to do. So I'm going to call it blocks, and this is extends, and this is going to extend a block. Okay, so this is going to the Flutter block that'll come up right there, and what it needs is it needs my events, and it's going to need my state, my model, and I'm going to call that, and that's the counter state that we made earlier. Okay, now then, yes, we are going to need to make a constructor for it, but I prefer to do it kind of out on myself. Counter blocks, and we're going to need to pass it the initial state that we made. Okay, so this block, we extended the block. The block is going to use this initial state, which we've set to 0 for our counter state. Okay, now let's go ahead and set what we're going to do. And I think that we need to add another parentheses, or close brackets as we like to call them here in Australia, and reset. And I'm going to do this, but what I'm going to do is going to come back and clean it up. 0. And this right here. Okay, counter state equals 0. All right, now from here, let's go ahead and I would prefer to see what happens when things change. So we're going to have the on change, on transmit, on error, and on event. And this is something that has changed recently. So if you're watching in the future, we used to have to make an old method and then override these different methods from there. So we're going to override, and this is just for being complete. We don't have to, but shoot, why not? So we'll just go ahead and do that and override. I think that I would like to do the on transition. Good old Copilot working for us. On error, sure, why not? Override, how about on event? Sure, cool. I think that those are all the ones that I want to take a look at. Okay, so whenever we're working with BLoC, what we want to do is we want to go to wherever when we want to put our blocks and our components so that we can read it, the BLoC provider. We want to put it as high up in the widget tree as possible. And for all intent and purposes, we're going, the highest up that you can go for all intent and purposes is the material app. So let's go ahead and wrap this with a widget, and let's put it with a BLoC provider. A BLoC provider needs a create, and what we're going to do is we're going to have our context, and we can do our counter blocks, and then our child and main app, no problems at all. Okay, now let's start working with what we want to do. Well, what we want to do is with the floating, when the floating action button is pressed, we want to change our state. And we also want to monitor our state right here. So let's go ahead and make it possible to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a block builder, and we're going to wrap it around the scaffold. Okay, so we're going to wrap this, and let's go ahead and put in a block builder. Okay, block builders don't have children. We can do this, but I prefer to do it another way. Okay, so let's go ahead and just put in the builder right here. And in this case, let's go ahead and use this way of doing it. I'm going to take the scaffold, and we're going to get rid of this child parameter. And let's go ahead and return. And let's go ahead and return the scaffold. Put a semicolon at the end of it. So in this case, I have not added the proper components that I need to. So I need to make sure that I put in the counter blocks, and then I put in the counter state. And let's give this a go. Yep, and it works. That is the error we get when we don't enter in the blocks and then the model that we are using. Okay, so no worries, all's good from right there. Let's give it another go, and it's running nice and smoothly. Okay, now what do we want to do? What we want to do is we want to display this right here, our display values, and we're going to, instead of it being values, we're going to go ahead and get rid of this value now. So wherever we got the value, we now want to use the block state instead. This state right here. So state dot counter. Okay, that's the value that we're looking for. Okay, now this no longer is value, so we want state dot counter. Okay, now what do we do here? Well, this is where we're going to work with changing it. So this is where we're going to either be using increment or reset. Okay, so let's go ahead and get rid of this set state because we're not going to need it anymore. Okay, now let's start focusing on this. So when I want it to reset, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to go to the block provider. .of. And yes, it is predicting it correctly. Counter blocks. And then it's going to be context. And then add. So this is how we're going to do it. This isn't add like we would think it add to a list. This is adding to the block provider. So this is a method that is used by the Flutter block. Okay, so when you see add, don't instantly think it is adding it, and it is adding it the way we think. But just remember, this is what's being added to the Flutter block. Okay, so don't get confused regarding that. So let's go ahead and let's put in a reset right here because it makes me happy to do it. And then from here, okay, I want to get rid of this else here because it's not really nice. Let's go ahead and make it a bit more, make it cleaner. And we're going to make it cleaner by adding a return right there. Okay, now, so when it's this case, it's going to reset it. But in the ordinary case, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to increment. Okay, so this is only happening in one instance. Every other instance is going to add, it's going to increment, it's going to actually add to the value. So I want to make sure that, we can see that we can access all the variables. So we're going to do that by doing another BLoC builder. And don't make the same mistake that I did last time. We're going to want to do the counter blocks, and then we're going to want to do the counter state. Okay, so nothing new here. And then what we'll do is we're going to do the builder. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and use the fat arrow notation. And let's go ahead and do a center, and then a child. And then let's just go to shoot a text. Okay. And then what we'll do is, what are we going to want to monitor? Well, let's just go ahead and put it the state, I suppose. Oh, so what am I doing here? Undefined. So state.counter. Okay. Now what that should do is it should put a counter right in the center here when we reset. So let's see what happens. Now, what happens when we press this? All right, so it is getting smaller. 3, 4. This is our last one, and when we press it again, should go back up. Okay, and let's go ahead and make sure that this is nice and clean. I want that right there. Okay, so this is how we cycle through with a enum using, so we've established a widget in this enum, and we are able to very easily cycle through by using the values. Let's just go ahead and get rid of this and this, and then change this from a StatefulWidget to a StatefulWidget. And by doing this, it should now work as expected. Well, there we have it. Right on. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will be making more in the future. If you have any requests, let me know.